I now want to talk about 3-point perspective, and it's kind of building on 2-point perspective. So we've already, talked so much about 2-point perspective. I don't want to go back to it. But what I want you to think about, let's use the seam of the book. This is our horizon line. And then kind of the edge of the page, we'll make a left and a right vanishing point. And we're going to go back to drawing some simple cubes again, but we're going to draw them in 3-point perspective. So halfway across this page, and I'm concentrating on the bottom of the page right now, so we're going to draw below the horizon line to begin with. Go ahead and put in that vertical horizon. And we're going to start out just like we would drawing a cube any other way. And so I'm going to draw the leading edge of a cube right here, and we'll carry our lines over towards the right vanishing point. Don't finish the cube yet, because we will need to do something different. And then lines going over to the left vanishing point. So there's my vanishing that we're all used to. The only difference with 3-point perspective, it gets a little bit more complicated, is that I have, and I'm going to assume that it's below here. If I'm below the horizon line, I've got a third vanishing point that is also below the horizon line and sits on that vertical horizon. So I'm going to assume, I'm not going to draw it on my page, it makes it a little too extreme, but I'm going to assume that there's another line that's vanishing coming down this way. And so we want some lines that are converging towards the middle. I'm going to try and mirror that over to the other side. These lines are converging towards a third vanishing point on the horizon line below the horizon line. So let's finish that cube. I'll clean it up just a little bit. These corners still go to that left and right vanishing point. But now I've got it's a little bit more of a dynamic view, right? And this is more like the way that we see things, especially if you walk up to larger objects. You can see them. If you look at this table right now, the legs on the table, if you look at this large podium presentation stand, and you stand up and you look down, you can see that convergence take place. It's just a little bit more accurate way that we perceive these drawings, or perceive these objects. So let's go ahead and hatch this. Let's just hatch the right surface, and that's it. And let's draw another one. Let's draw another cube over here. And before we start, this is where it gets a little bit more difficult. Once I start moving further away from the horizon line, that middle line, I have to think more about the convergence. So when I draw the leading edge of this cube, it's not going to be straight up and down. I'm going to try and draw it about the same size. I'm coming down just a little bit. And this is really going to start to look pretty distorted. It should look pretty cool, but it's going to look pretty distorted, because all the sides of this cube should be vanishing. Let's hatch the side of this. I'm just going to continue to work in object lines here and try and apply a little bit better line weight. Okay, let's draw one more cube over here. So again, I'm starting with my leading edge is already vanishing. This makes getting the proportion of the cube, a little bit more challenging. I'm going to cut this off a little bit because I think that's a better cube proportion. And again, here I'm going to just hatch that right face. Now, here's the other reason why this would get just a little bit more complicated. And so I want to draw, we're going to take this cube and we're just going to drop it down and we're going to draw another one below it. And so what's happening, make sure you look for just a second. You can finish those cubes up in a minute. But what's happening as I get further and further away from the horizon line, what happens to that top face? It starts to open up, right? What should happen is that as I go further away, I now have foreshortening going towards the third vanishing point. So the other thing that happens is that the front, that leading edge of my cube is going to start to shorten a little bit, right? Just like when you looked at our 2-point perspective cube rules, the further something moves over here, I start to see less of this face. As we start to go further and further down, this edge needs to get smaller. So let's draw one more cube right here in 3-point perspective. It's going to start to look pretty distorted, but we want to make sure that if I see more of that, if that face opens up here, I see a little bit less of the front. In fact, I think proportionally, I think I need to shorten this thing up already. So just as Rusty is always, he's saying, hey, keep your lines light, make adjustments. I'm making an adjustment before I start to make this darker. I'm evaluating what I'm drawing as I'm drawing it to see if I've got that proportion right. I'm just going to hatch the right side of that surface again. But you see how the front edge, that leading edge, is starting to get smaller here, it's longer here. The whole thing's getting smaller because it's foreshortening, but the top surface opens up and then the sides begin to close down. Okay, so those are the rules, and it's called 3-point perspective because I'm using 3 points. I don't know why they don't call it 4-point perspective, because what we're going to talk about now is we're going to draw objects above the horizon line. What do you think should happen if we draw objects above the horizon line? What's that? As they go further and further away from the horizon line, if it's above the horizon line, think about looking at skyscrapers. If you're standing in New York City or Chicago or Atlanta and you look up, what happens? The tops converge towards the top, right? And so in reality, what we want to do is I want to imagine now, as opposed to this vanishing point that's somewhere down here. If I'm above the horizon line, equal distance, same distance up, I want to have the vertical lines converge towards a top vanishing point. Okay? So I'm at, well, you know what? Let's draw a cube right here. Leading edge right on that horizon line is straight up and down. I'm going to go towards the same two vanishing points. But the trick is that now above the horizon line, my vertical lines should vanish towards a third vanishing point along that horizon, but above my page. Does that make sense? Feels a little awkward. Feels real awkward, doesn't it? So what about this doesn't make sense? Where is this lying to us? As things get further away, they get smaller. Doesn't matter which direction. But what's wrong with this equation? Where does this present a problem? If I'm below the horizon line, my third vanishing point is below my page. If I'm above the horizon line, my third vanishing point is above my page. Where does that present problems?
It'll get warped on the horizon line.
Yeah, so what does that mean for an object on the horizon line?
Probably just leave them parallel.
You could leave them parallel. What's really happening is that even though we're drawing straight lines, we actually see, you've looked at a fisheye lens, that's how we see things. That's how we really perceive things. And in fact, if you go, what I want you to do sometime in the next couple of days, maybe the tallest kind of edge in this building is in the staircase. Walk over to something that's pretty tall. Just look straight ahead and then think about what's happening right here. Above me, this is converging towards a point over there. Below me, it's converging towards a point below me. But it's essentially wrapped. It's like a bubble. So typically what you'll see, people will make the decision, even if they have objects that maybe cross the horizon line, they're going to make a decision to just stick with one or the other. So if I'm drawing, if most everything is here and it's below the horizon line, what I'll probably do if I want to use straight lines is just have that third vanishing point below the horizon line, and yeah, it's going to look a little bit awkward when it gets above it. You could, if you really wanted to, you could, try and draw in that little curve so that it is somewhat of a bubble, right? But that's basically what you're looking at with three-point perspective. You guys have any questions? Why would I want to use three-point perspective? It's more complicated, it's more challenging. Why would I want to use it?
You can see like an object kind of from above and below it.
You can define the size of an object.
It helps us with perception. It can make it, it's also maybe more dynamic. Like with exploratory sketching, do I really want to have to worry about that third point? Maybe not, unless I'm trying to nail down something that is more dynamic and I can use it. So for larger objects, if you're drawing, and so just to let you know what we're doing this week is we're drawing outdoor cooking products. So grills or smokers, or if you want to have a hibachi outside, or if you're doing something with camping. Camping is a little small. Those little things are made to be portable. The point is that I want you to sketch it in three-point perspective for your final rendering. And so if you think about a grill, it's something like this object here in the table where you really do begin to perceive that third vanishing point. Most objects, when we look at them, it's difficult to perceive it. Anything smaller than that, like coffee makers, you probably don't really want to draw those with 3-point perspective, but something that's a little bit larger you might. And so, in fact,